Practice number 10 in the books for the Buckeyes. Tim May, the 41-year vet, Andy Baxter, and Spencer Holbrook. You know the drill by now. Tim, what'd you learn after talking to Matt Guerrieri, James Laurinaitis, and a big batch of Buckeyes?
I mainly talked to James Laurinaitis and Mitchell Melton, the comeback kid, etc. Dallin Hayden a little bit, Caleb Downs a little bit. Who else did I talk to? But bottom line is, what I learned is Mitchell Melton is back and he's playing. He's having a great time. This is a guy that's undergone two knee injuries, one to each knee, and what big plans they had for him 2 years ago, being that Leo. This time of the year, he's going to be the Leo. He suffers a injury in the spring game
on bad turf.
Yeah, and since then he's pretty much been on the back burner. He got to play a little bit last year, but like he said, it was like playing as a freshman. Kind of learning things all over again. I'm writing about him as soon as we get done with this. And the bottom line about it is, there's a guy, if you watched on Saturday, as we did, and you're standing there behind the offense getting to watch, which is my favorite vantage point of anything we do all year, Mitchell Melton was coming hard and fast off the edge, man. And so you add that to the depth chart on that defensive side of the ball, it just shows you what this team is going to be all about from a roster talent standpoint.
What'd you learn, Andy?
Well, another player flying to the ball was C.J. Hicks. We saw him blitzing a lot.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
As well as Sonny Styles. We asked James Laurinaitis about both those guys. They're kind of repping at the will spot right now alongside Cody Simon in that 4-2-5, and they're competing for that spot. But right now it seems like they're 5 deep at linebacker. That's what James Laurinaitis said. He would like to be 6 deep if possible, but he says, like, if there's only 2 guys ready to play, only 2 will play. If there's 5, 5 will play. And he's taking it week by week, and that's going to be in the season too. Just because whoever starts on week 1 doesn't mean they're going to start at week 13 or even week 2.
Yeah.
And so he's taking that very seriously. He did not like to come off the field when he was playing here. He talked about when Luke Fickell would pull him off. Sometimes he'd be very angry, even if it was against like Youngstown State and they were up 41-7 or something. He didn't like to be off the field, but he says now as a coach, he sees it from a different angle. The importance of a long season now, 16, 17 games, you need to be healthy for the game and then also championship season. And so he's going to be monitoring it week by week. And with how much they talked about last year with, how Cody Simon probably should have played even a little bit more, I think they're taking that seriously now, just valuing a little bit more of meritocracy of like, you got to earn it every week.
Penguins catching a stray there from you, Andy.
That's what he said.
James Laurinaitis said it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was there
not
when he
my
said
words.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly what he said.
All right. The Penguins are safe for now.
42-0, I think he said.
Yeah.
Okay. Penguins are safe. I learned that Josh Simmons is kind of a changed person. He looks trimmed down, but he also looks. He's got the Josh Fryer arms now. He looks more comfortable just being around the building. He looks more comfortable talking to the media. It's not an easy transition to go from San Diego State to Ohio State. But another spring here really does help him. His first spring here really helps him. He had 3 penalties in his first 2 starts at Ohio State. He said he felt really heavy against Indiana. In November, he had 0 penalties. He had 1 against Wisconsin to end October. He had 1 in the Cotton Bowl, which is at this point, just a throwaway because of how bad the line was. So
it's a blur.
Yeah. So that month of November, when it needed to be done, Josh Simmons was really, really good. I would argue he was the best offensive lineman on the roster in that November stretch. So this is a guy, I'm obviously going to write about him because I'm gushing about him, but he's got the makings of being a very, very good left tackle for Ohio State. And I think he's going to creep up on people because they just remember him as the guy who had 2 penalties against Indiana and looked a little flat-footed at times early in the season. He's not really remembered as the guy who was so good in November. Start to think of him as that guy who was in November because he looks good, he looks comfortable, and I think he's, like I said yesterday, he's percolating. He's starting to get some. He's starting to get some buzz as like a guy who you could see really shine in this offense.
Yeah, and the interesting thing I asked him, this is modern college football anymore. He transferred in from San Diego State. He knew that was a step up.
Yeah.
And it took him a while to, I think, like you said, to get comfortable in it. But once he did, he played at a pretty high level. And I said, and now this year you've got a guy transferring in from Alabama who has had to play at that level. Seth McLaughlin, and it's just, he didn't. I'm not sure he had a profound answer to the question, but it just shows you it's an example of modern college football anymore of how the pieces get put together, not just through recruiting, but by bringing guys in, quality guys, some who have to develop, some of whom you could almost plug and play. Seth McLaughlin looks like a plug and play kind of guy. He's obviously in that battle with Carson Hinsman for the starting job at center. But college football teams are not like they used to be by any stretch, and that's a great example, the offensive line.
Well, Josh Simmons had to be plug and play last year. And
Right.
It wasn't really
But you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
about plug
No,
and play.
yeah.
Is this guy's played at this level. He's used to this level. Josh Simmons was not used to this level, but it was necessary for him to come on. Seth McLaughlin, you're going to feel pretty good if he doesn't win the starting job, that you could put him in the game, and he's been at this level, this elite level, playing for the last several years for Alabama. That's the example I was using.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to expound upon. Is like Josh Simmons had to play last year. There was not really a choice because Ryan Day said even midway through the year, like, we don't have the guys behind them to put in there. So like Josh Simmons was forced into that action. Seth McLaughlin's competing to be in that action as a potential plug and play guy. Josh Simmons, he was just plugged in. Another guy who's going to be just plugged into this defense, and it's just going to unlock something new. You talked to him more than both of us did, Caleb Downs. Matt Guerrieri said he has to be prepared every day or else Caleb Downs will be ahead of him, which is just crazy. But that tells you the preparedness and what we hear about Caleb Downs is validated.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable the things that are said about a kid who's only entering his second year of college football, Andy.
Now, of course, Caleb Downs denied that statement because
Yeah.
he's just so humble, and he was asked about all the crowds that surrounded him at Student Appreciation Day, and he took that in stride too, and just is not going to, gloat about anything. His maturity, I think, continues to impress all of us here when we talk to him. He's very down to earth, very well spoken, and he was asked a lot about his film watching habits and the homework that he does for practice and especially for games. And it's just it's a regimented schedule. He goes through practice, then he goes and watches film, then he does homework, like actual schoolwork, student athlete life, and then he's back to watching more film. And it's not just film on himself. He's watching film of NFL games and safeties in the NFL like Antoine Winfield, and he's trying to replicate his game and to constantly improve. And I think that just comes off the way he speaks. And it's really impressive for a guy that has so many expectations and so much status already.
Yeah.
But he is just like so humble as can be. And I think that's just a great combination. Ryan Day always talks about that. Like, one thing is the skill, the other is the work ethic. When you have both, you can be a really good player.
Yeah, I asked him about being mobbed after the Student Appreciation Day, about the crowd, about the expectations. And he had an interesting answer. He goes, all he's concerned about is his relationship with the Lord in terms of expectations and living up to anybody else's, whatever you want to call it, pre thoughts on how good or bad he could be. He's going to be very good and stuff. But he continues to impress you. This guy, this isn't going out on a limb. This guy is one of the elite, if not the number one safety in the country going into this season.
That's not hyperbole.
That's not putting it. That's not. I don't think that's being hyperbole.
No.
And yet wants to be better. I'm telling you guys, I've been covering this, as you pointed out, every time we're on here. We've covered this thing for a long time. There are a lot of deep, introspective, for the most part, humble dudes on this football team.
Yeah.
Which should bode well for them this coming season. But like you said, you got to go out there and get it done. But boy, when you got maybe, for example, the best safety in the country going out there to get it done, you kind of got a leg up on people.
And you've got a fifth-year senior who's played now, 5 seasons, also here with him, alongside him, Lathan Ransom. Like, that combination could be really special. Matt Guerrieri had a lot to say about those guys. Another guy who just strikes you as super humble and now has a new position coach we talked to today was Quinshon Judkins. Interesting guy. He's pretty introspective on how he speaks about the game as well. He's excited about Carlos Locklin, the new running backs coach who was announced on Monday night. Carlos Locklin recruited him to Florida State.
Right.
Then, I'm sure Carlos Locklin at some point got a hold of Quinshon this offseason because everyone tried to
recruit him.
Yeah, to recruit him to Oregon after he gets out of the transfer portal there at Ole Miss. So, he has a pre-existing relationship with Carlos Locklin, and that bodes pretty well. Ryan Day said he wanted to get but get some input from the running backs about this running backs coaching hire. Seems like everybody's on board with it. Dallin Hayden said some decent things about, for day one of Carlos Locklin. I'm sure Travion Henderson, he doesn't really have a bad thing to say about anybody. Maybe the guy who landed on him from Notre Dame. But other than that, Travion's not going to say anything mean about anybody. So,
landed on him, took a cheap shot right into his ribs.
Now you've got a new running backs coach, and we had a couple running backs talk about it, Andy.
Yeah, they said that he was surprisingly quiet. That's what Quinshon said. But it's his first day, just walking around, trying to see how everything works. But he did give them some feedback just on things from practice that he kind of noticed and talking with them. Dallin Hayden also mentioned, look, this is a guy that coached in Memphis area from 2009, 2016, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. And so Dallan Hayden's a Memphis guy. And so they had that to connect on. So there's clearly some ties from recruiting, from the Tennessee stuff. And I think that, you talked about it. They were giving feedback through this hiring process. It wasn't something that Ryan Day was just saying. They were asked about that today, and they were involved. They weren't interviewing these candidates, but they were giving active feedback. Ryan Day would say, hey, we're talking to this guy. We're bringing this guy in. And that search, Ryan Day said yesterday on 97.1 The Fan, it was at least 7 candidates they sat down and interviewed. There were 10 to 12 they identified. This was a patient search, and clearly they feel like they got the right guy in Carlos Loughlin.
Yeah, and what I understand, Ryan did a pretty thorough job just in amassing the candidate group. I know he talked to Pepe Pearson, for example, a former Ohio State player, because you wanted to get a feel for the whole the schmear out there. It's funny though, when I asked Dallan Hayden, so I think it was Dallan Hayden when you heard it was when you got a new name, did you Google him? And he said no.
Yeah.
That's why somebody threw out a question at Quinshon Judkins. What about are you a soft batch cookie? Which is the first thing almost comes up when you Google Carlos Loughlin about.
Yeah.
I don't want any soft batch cookies around. You know what I mean?
I do like soft batch cookies.
I do too, which is very interesting. Which tells me I probably couldn't play running back for Carlos Loughlin.
Me
but
too.
I digress, because soft batch cookies bring soft batch middles. But I digress. It's interesting to get their input, but I think Ryan Day and others hope Carlos Loughlin's going to be here a lot longer than these guys he's going to be coaching.
Yeah.
But it was curious because, as Ryan Day has said, for public purview, this is probably the best running back room in the country in terms of talent.
He doesn't say probably,
talent.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm including James Peoples, for example, Sam Williams Dixon.
Yep, there you go.
In that, although he's coming back from being banged up, but the bottom line is you want if you ever want chemistry to work in a room, it's this year because of this team and where it can go if in fact the chemistry comes together.
Yeah, one other guy that I need to mention before we get out of here, Jaden Bonsu gaining a little bit of steam. Matt Guerrieri talked about him as a guy because Malik Hartford's out for the spring, because Lathan's still coming back from that foot injury that he sustained at Wisconsin. And to be honest, because Caleb Downs, how much work does he truly need out here in 11-on-11, things like that. Jaden Bonsu, we saw him out here with the first and second team on Saturday. I think he's starting to gain a little buzz. Matt Guerrieri talked pretty glowingly of him, somebody to watch moving forward.
Yeah, because it's not just he was out here and had to play, it's what he did when he got his shots.
Yeah, he looked good.
I mean, he jumped out at you several times.
Yeah, for sure. But we're going to get out of here and go write about it. I'm sure we'll have something on Jaden Bonsu. Tim's going to write about
Mitchell Melton. And he's come back.
Caleb Downs.
He's going to write about Caleb Downs, and I'm going to have a story on Josh Simmons and his rise to becoming one of the best offensive linemen in this building. But until then, go to lettermenrow.com and get the coverage that's already available right now, and then see that coverage later that we just talked about. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com, where you can get full coverage of the Ohio State Buckeyes for just $1 for your first month. That's all the way through the end of April, which takes you through transfer portal season. The portal closes April 30th, and you'll have access to Lettermen Row all the way through that period, through the spring game and through the transfer portal window. It's a big time to be here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, to be a member of Lettermen Row. Come join us, $1 for your first month. We'll see you guys over there at lettermenrow.com.